Hello, I'm Lee Spaziano, and in this video, we're going to be looking at ROI expectancy. We're going to use it to compare various positions, and specifically, we're going to look at credit spreads, strangles, and iron condors. All right, we're going to start off basic, and then we're going to move into more advanced topics. So let's take a look at how to calculate ROI. So ROI is return on investment, and it's simply our annual return on capital divided by our total investment. It's really that simple. It's nothing to it really. But what if we want to calculate our ROI on shorter term trades? Well, we have to start off with a thing called ROC, which is return on capital, and that's calculated by looking at our total profit divided by the amount that you invested. Okay, so that's really similar to ROI, except the difference is that return on capital can happen on any time frame you like, where ROI is typically treated on an annual basis. So return on capital might be 5 days, where you could extrapolate that out to an annual ROI so you can compare two different plays to see which one's better. Okay, so let's take a look at how to calculate ROI based on return on capital. Okay, so we start off with our return on capital, our ROC, and because that's a percentage, we'll add 1 to it, and then we're going to raise that to the power of t, and then we're going to subtract 1. And I know that's a little complicated. So what is t? So t is going to be 365 divided by our number of days. That's the number of days in trade. So if we have a 10-day trade, it's going to be 365 divided by 10. If we have a 5% return on capital in a 5-day period, that will calculate out using this formula to give us our ROI. Now, it's going to be a lot easier to see it in Excel, so let's go ahead and move over there. Okay, so here we are in Excel, and we're going to do an example trade. So for this trade, we'll say that we're in the trade for 365 days. Now, let's suppose that we made $500 profit, and we did that by investing $10,000. Here we go. So we'll calculate our return on capital, and that's simply our profit divided by our investment, and that's 5%. So let's go ahead and enter in the equation for ROI. Okay, so I'll come up here in the formula bar and I will type in the equation. And what we have here is 1 plus our return on capital raised to the power of 365 divided by D2, which is our days in trade, and in this case is also 365, minus 1. So we'll enter that in, and it gives us a return on investment of 5%. And that's what you would expect. Our return on capital equals our return on investment if we were in a trade for 365 days. But what if instead of 365 days, we were in this for only 180 days? Now our return on capital is 5%, but our return on investment went up because when you annualize that return on capital, it's more than double. Now, a lot of times we'll do a 1-day trade or a 7-day trade. If we did a 7-day trade, that number gets to be pretty big. A lot of times we'll do a small credit spread, a bull put credit spread, for example. We'll make $200 profit. We will have risked $300, and we'll do that over a, I don't know, let's call it a 1-day period. And you can see that our return on investment is too big to display. Let's turn it into a 7-day trade so we can actually see the number. Here we go. That's a great big number. But that's kind of unrealistic because we're not going to do that every time. As a matter of fact, what we'll start to look at is the expectancy on a given trade. Not what the total credit is, but what we expect to make. So if we're looking at for example, SPX bull put credit spread on a 1 DTE or 0 DTE basis, we're not really expecting to make $200 every time. Sure, the credit might be $200, But really, when you average out all of your trades, you might make an average of $26 per trade. And if you did that on a 1 day period, it's a great big number. But you can't do it on a 1 day period because you don't have SPX options expiring every 1 day. So you could do 3 a week, but maybe we want to just say 7 days. So if you make $26 on a bull put spread, where on average, if you made $26 on a bull put spread, where on average you invested $300, and on average it took a total of 7 days, that's 7,500% ROI. Our return on capital is only 8.7%, but we did 52 of these in a year. So that compounded to a pretty big number. So this is kind of the basis for comparing different trades. If we wanted to compare doing a 1 day trade with a certain expectancy versus a 7 day trade with a certain expectancy, these are the equations that we would use to sort that out. Now, let's use this information that we know and look at a couple of different plays. This was a great example of a bull put credit spread or a vertical spread. Let's take a look at comparing a strangle compared to an iron condor. Okay, let's have a little fun with this. Let's look at doing a strangle on QQQ. We can see right now the price is $3.57, and we'll go to our trade window. We'll pick an expiration date. Let's go with this 41 days till expiration, and we'll go to 1 standard deviation, which is right here. It's a 16 delta. And we're going to sell a 328 put. We'll go to our 1 standard deviation on the call side. That's a 386, which is a 7 delta for 59 cents. And we're collecting a total of $3.28. Now, we don't know if we're really going to collect 328. That's based on how good of a fill we get, but let's just use that to compare the trade. So we're looking at, what did we say, 41 days, 41 days in trade, and we would potentially make a profit of $328, and our investment is right here. It's our buying power effect. So our buying power effect is 4192.50. So best case scenario, we're looking at making 7.8% return on capital, which calculates to be an ROI of 95.5%. So that's pretty good. But what if we did it just a little different? For instance, what if we decided that we were going to take this trade off, not at expiration, but at 21 days? So we would hold on to this trade for only 20 days out of 41 days. But now we can't expect to make our entire credit. We did receive a credit of $328, but if we're buying it back at 20 days, maybe we're going to buy it back for $128 or $150, and maybe we only made a profit of $175, just for example. Our total investment stays the same, but now we're in the trade for 20 days, and our profit was 175. Our return on capital went down to 4.2, but our return on investment went up to 110 because we made a little more than half in a little less than half the time, or whatever that works out to be. So we've compared taking this trade off early compared to leaving it on until expiration. So if you're thinking about closing out your trades or rolling them forward a month or whatever you do to prevent gamma risk or whatever, you can see that it actually improves your ROI instead of hurting your ROI. Now, let's do a little comparison here. Let's take this off and let's compare that to TQQ, for instance, and we'll look at the same expiration date and we'll go 1 standard deviation out again. and 1 standard deviation on the top side. And here we go. We are collecting, we're still at 41 days. We're collecting $264, and our buying power effect is $6,391.75. And you can see that this is considerably less. The TQQ Strangle is only making half as much return on investment as the QQQ Strangle. So the QQQ, everything else being equal, is going to be a better investment for us. And again, if we change this to 20 days and we take our profit and make it a more realistic, let's call it $140 because we're taking it off early, we're still at 48%. Compare that to QQQ, which was around 100%. TQQ, in this specific example, with this specific expiration date and implied volatility, is not nearly as good of an investment as QQQ. So when I'm putting on Strangles, trying to decide which underlying I want to trade or which trade I want to place on an underlying, this is the process that I use. Which one is going to give me the best return on investment? Okay, now let's go back to QQQ and compare doing an iron condor to that same strangle. So let's go back up here. Let's make it a little bit juicier. We'll go with the 330 and the 385. So we're in it for 41 days. And let's just hold till expiration for this example. We're collecting $358 and our our buying power effect is $43.92.50. And again, that's all right here on the page. Right here and here and here. Those are our parameters. Let me see it. Sure. So now let's take this and turn it into an iron condor. For fun, let's make it $5 wide. So 385 we'll buy a long leg at 390 on the call side, and on the put side we'll buy a long put at 325. Now the most we can risk on the bottom side is $5, and the most we can risk on the top side is $5. Okay? So our total risk, the most we can possibly lose on this trade, is $500. But we're receiving a $79 credit. So let's put this in. We have remember where we are here. You know what? Let's make a copy of this. This whole thing, we'll just copy it right there. Do it side by side. So we're still 41 days. Our profit potential is $79. And our risk of loss is 500 minus the 79, or our total investment is 500 minus 79, which works out to be $421, right? So $421. And what you can see here is that the iron condor is actually paying more than 3 times as much as the strangle is. So it looks like the return on investment for the iron condor is much better than the strangle. Okay, so the obvious question here is, why would anybody ever do a strangle over an iron condor? If the iron condor is paying 362% ROI and the strangle is only paying 100% ROI, why would anybody consider the strangle above the iron condor? And it has to do with risk, and it also has to do with portfolio allocation. If you look at this, if the QQQ falls below 325 and you have an iron condor, you lose 100% of that trade. Or even if it goes up above 390, you've lost 100% of that trade. So let's say you had an account and you only had, I don't know, $4,500 in the account. You could do 10 iron condors with these numbers. If it drops to 325, your account is busted. You literally wiped out your account. On the other hand, if you did a strangle, you can only afford to do one of these, but if it drops to 325, it actually doesn't hurt you very much at all. You only lose a couple $100. So What would happen is that in a strangle, the buying power effect is built into the trade that prohibits you from losing too much money. It's actually less risky than if you had actually just bought the stock. You would lose less with a price movement in the underlying than if you actually own the stock. But with the iron condor, it's actually magnified. It's leveraged quite a bit. So what would happen is you wouldn't want to buy 10 of these with your account because you would blow out your account. So instead of buying 10, you might buy one or two and leave the rest of your cash on the sidelines, sitting there in cash, unused. So instead of $421 at risk, you're really setting aside, let's call it $4,000, that you're not going to touch. And now all of a sudden you've made $79 on $4,000 that you've set aside, which isn't so good. So maybe you don't want to set aside that much cash. Maybe you only want to set aside $500, or maybe you want to set aside $1,000, 1,000, because an iron condor has a risk of 100% loss. You really need to set aside extra capital, extra cash that's not being used in such binary positions. And because you're putting money into capital reserves, it hurts your total account return on investment. While the individual trade return on investment was good, your total account return on investment might be a lot less than that. Anyway, that's just my position on it. I've been through some downturns, and I wouldn't want to have all of my money put into the equivalent of vertical spreads that can be lost in a moment. If I get assigned on a strangle and I take a position, sure, I could lose 10%, 20%. If you look at March of 2020, you could even lose 40 or 50%. But when it comes to iron condors, those positions would be 100% wiped out. Okay, that's my analysis on ROI expectancy. We compared different underlyings, we compared different strategies, and now we can use this as a tool to make trading decisions about which investments that we want to make on our own account and what portfolio allocation we're willing to risk on an individual trade. All right, good luck. We'll see you in the next video.